This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
Chuck Schumer has for many years, many times publicly said, you don't shut down the government just so you can debate policy. Policy debates are what Congress is for. That is literally their day job. You don't shut down the government, start hurting people, start hurting the economy just so you can debate about something that should be discussed anyway. It's very simple. Open the government and keep discussing the policy. That's literally what they're elected to do. The fact is, he is being a coward, folding to his left-wing base, who frankly is going to attack him anyway. You know, he just needs to do the right thing, and I hope he does do the right thing. And honestly, we had an okay conversation with him when he was over at the White House with the president, and the president told him very clearly, along with Leader Jeffries, I want to work with you guys on health care. I want to talk to you guys about health care, but you cannot hold the American people hostage. Open the government and let's work on health care and everything else we need to work on. That message was delivered very clearly. The president has said it publicly dozens of times. I don't know what their argument is. What I think is that they really do want health care for illegal immigrants. They really do want to repeal the common sense reforms that we put into law to kick dead people off the Medicaid rolls and these other things. And that's what the left wants. That's what these protesters want. They want free health care for everybody, including illegals. They want things that the American taxpayer should not have to pay for. They have not voted for, and they never agreed to.
That was White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair. You know, there's a dangerous game being played in D.C., and this time it's the people who lose. These Democrats are deliberately keeping the government shut down. We know. We were told by the Democrat whip that they're using this as leverage. They're holding federal workers, small business owners, and working families hostage to score political points, or so they think. They claim it's about protecting, excuse me, and I'm doing air quotes, essential services, but it feels more like punishment. In places like Michigan, this isn't a D.C. drama. It's real. It's a real-life hardship, from delayed paychecks to disrupted benefits. The pain is spreading far beyond the Potomac. To unpack what's really happening and why Democrats seem intent on prolonging the suffering, we're joined by one of the nation's most respected conservative voices on energy, accountability, and just common sense governance. And I've been practicing this. Mandy Gunasekara is here to join us. Mandy, did I nail it, or did I just completely bungle it again?
You totally nailed it. I'm serious. You did. That was great.
I feel so great about that. But Mandy, for those outside the Beltway, what is really driving this shutdown? Is it ideology, incompetence, or just political theater?
I think it's a combination of both, but what the Democrats have made clear is that they want to prioritize providing health care to illegal immigrants rather than doing what they're supposed to do, like you aptly laid out in the introduction, which is to keep the government running. And it's, Schumer himself has said that you should not use keeping the government open as a leverage point in negotiating policy, yet that's exactly what they are doing. Look, if they want to have a conversation about health care or spending or any of those other issues, then they should have that in the context of tax and spend policy discussion, not in the context of keeping the federal government open. Yeah. And now you have Democrat politicians in Michigan who are running ads, Representative Shree Thinadar, that are running ads saying we've shut the government down because it's about health care. So it's an open admission that they're making this about policy, something their own leader said they shouldn't do, and they're just turning it into theater. And you have these extreme left-wing groups that keep pushing them into this really this extensive corner at this point, yet the American people are really hurting. It's not just in D.C., it's far outside the Beltway. I live in Mississippi. I have a number of friends that work in federal roles for the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're looking down the pipeline of not having a paycheck and having to deal with the consequences of that. It is far, it is wide, it's cutting into benefits for Americans, especially women and infants. With the WIC program, this is critical. Our military men and women, the people in charge of keeping this country safe, and it has to end.
Well, you talked about Thinadar.
Returning back to Detroit, this morning after the Republicans failed to show up in the U.S. House. We got to make sure Americans have the health care that they need. And if that means we got to shut this government down, so be it.
I mean, they've been telling us all along. And Mandy, they told us that illegal migrants weren't receiving Medicaid, but I want to really quickly play this from CMS.
The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, have confirmed that $1 billion taxpayer dollars were given to illegal migrants via Medicaid, meaning free health care for illegals. CMS.
But Mandy, we've been told over time and time again that this doesn't happen. Why are we still allowed? What's the end game for the Democrats? I mean, what is their end game? What do they expect to win out of this, Mandy?
I don't know. That's a good question. The mind of a Democrat right now, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense, and it clearly has to be some crazy ideological commitment. I mean, let's go back to one of the early Democrat presidential debates where they were asked, would they provide health care to illegal immigrants in this country? And they all, just about all of them, raised their hands, including the current leaders of the Democrat Party. And so it goes to show you the reason they're prioritizing migrant health care over the well-being of American citizens is because that is their end game. That is the only way that they can continue to keep political power, because the American people have caught on to their lies, they've caught on to their betrayals, they've caught on to Otto Pinjot, and for all of the damage their policies cost to the economy and took away money from hardworking American families. The American people are onto that and the lack of safety with their open border policies. And so they have turned to illegal immigrants to try to shore up their Democrat base. They know that they're losing minority votes. Yeah. And so it really is a political play for them. And it's disheartening to see, because the well-being of American citizens should trump any political end goal. Yet Democrats have shown time and time again they will prioritize their political goals to the detriment of this country.
You know, I heard you slick. That was so smooth. Otto Pinjot. I heard you made. I had coffee in my hand and was taking a sip while you said that. But Mandy, you've worked at the EPA. You were chief of staff there. What happens inside agencies during shutdowns? Do bureaucrats exploit these moments to create this political pressure that we're seeing? And as the chief of staff, how did you handle that? Because I'm sure all eyes turned to someone like yourself, especially at the EPA.
Yeah, well, you have to look at it. Okay, what are the most critical functions that we, the agency, provide? And at EPA, a lot of it has to do with maintaining air quality, water quality, going after bad actors that are polluting the environment, which unfortunately there still are those people trying to cut corners, and addressing legacy pollution. Those are the core functions of the agency. You siphon all that through alongside the president's key priorities, and you make sure the people who are working on those are deemed essential. And then you have to make that decision, essential versus non-essential. There are quite a few people at EPA that are non-essential, and so this goes to the broader need for bureaucratic reform. But setting that aside, when you've got to keep these critical operations going, as well as emergency response, that's something else that EPA has a hand in. You just make those decisions of what offices need to be open, what roles have a substantive role in keeping those offices going, and you make that determination. But it is really hard, and unfortunately, you have some within the career civil service that will use this to, they'll go straight to the media. Some of the worst offenders are the heads of the quote-unquote public sector unions. They try to fearmonger and they try to blame shift. They're always pushing the Democrat talking points, despite the fact they're supposed to be nonpartisan and looking out for the labor interests of the people that they represent. They're really just an extension of the Democrat left political arm, and so they try to stir up controversy, stir up fear. In this instance, it's as if they want to prolong the shutdown. They think it's going to hurt President Trump, and if they think something's going to hurt President Trump, they will keep it going as long as possible. And then, you have some federal workers that they don't mind. They just treat it as, it's like a vacation. Mm-hmm. And they believe that they'll get back pay regardless of how long it actually goes. So it's a combination for sure. But as a chief, you make those decisions. You know who you can rely on your political team as well as the career team, and you try to keep those people in the fold motivated and taking care of them as much as you can.
You know, I just interviewed one of the former White House communications director. He was responsible for doing the rapid response on X. Mm-hmm. And I told him the comms team needs to step up. And here's an example of what I mean by that. And I've been playing this because I wanted to get out there. You're close to the Trump administration. This needs what Representative Peter Meyer, or former congressman, I should say, from Michigan, Peter Meyer says here is Republicans really need to get out there and push this. And I want to play this audio. I want to get your take on what the former congressman had to say, Mandy.
I don't think this is good for the Democrats. I mean, you have Donald Trump negotiating Mideast peace and flying to Egypt to oversee an agreement between Hamas and Israel. And meanwhile, Chuck Schumer is parading around the Senate, trying to stage a photo op. I mean, the split screen between actual governance of the Trump administration and just Senate Democrats trying to figure out their message, right? Senator Van Hollen pointed out, or he called the expiring Obamacare subsidies a ticking time bomb that Republicans planted. They were introduced in ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, in 2021. I know, I was in Congress. We all voted against it on the Republican side. That was a Democrat budget reconciliation bill. It got to the Senate, and it needed 50 Senate votes. They talked about making it permanent, could not get unified Democratic support to make it permanent. It came up again in the Inflation Reduction Act. They kicked a can down the road. Again, solely Democrats voting in support of this could not get Democrats to agree to make these permanent. And now somehow, years later, it's the Republicans.
Points of why the Democrats are shutting down the government, he just explained so beautifully. And finally, Senate Majority Leader Thune, he went to the Senate floor and finally somewhat talked about this. Why isn't this being pushed far and wide, Mandy?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's so many different angles the Republicans could take because President Trump continues to do the work of the American people that he was elected to do and achieving amazing things, from trying to get peace in the Middle East to continuing to support the economy and encourage deals here at home, taking care of the folks that he promised would not be forgotten anymore. But yeah, look, the heart of what the Democrats have settled on, and I love his earlier point too, they had to figure out what their messaging was going to be. First, it wasn't about health care. Now it is about health care. And the thing is, the Democrats created the problems within the healthcare industry. We're living under the effects of Obamacare. We're living under the effects of all of these subsidies. And I think it's a really important point when the Democrats themselves could not coalesce around this idea and keep it permanent because it is really bad policy. Yeah. And I do think it should be pushed far and wide. They've created the shutdown problem. They also, the policy issue that they want to fix, I'm using air quotes too, that they want to fix, they created that problem, and we're not going to solve it with a shutdown government. They need to set that aside, and if they want to have a serious conversation about fixing the American healthcare industry, they can. Look what President Trump's already done, though. Yeah. He's lowering drug prices. He has Trump RX. He's incorporating things like IVF. He's lowering the cost of that, things that are critical for people to have a family. He's taking care of the American people, even on the health care side, and the Democrats just want to keep playing political games. And I think you're exactly right. I'm going to make sure that clip is sent to some of the folks that are working on the cause because it needs to be clear to the American people. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'll text it to you. And, before we get to your book, because, you got to sell books too, but Michigan is home to nearly 30,000 federal civilian employees. And they're facing furlough or unpaid work because of this shutdown. How do you see those paid disruptions impacting local communities, especially small town communities that rely on those workers?
Huge. It's huge. If they're not going to work, they're not going to be getting their daily coffees. So then you look at the coffee shops or the breakfast places, those tend to be really negatively impacted. And then you look at people, if it gets to the point where they're going to have missed mortgages or missed rents, that starts impacting the real estate landscape. And hopefully it's short term, but that creates very real stress for the people who are having to deal with it, the people who can't pay the mortgage, as well as the people who are depending on those payments to keep their broader business going. Yeah. So it has a direct effect on the American family, people who are working on critical aspects of our government, but the Democrats have shut it down and won't let them get to work. It's almost like COVID all over again, where they're shutting things down. People want to work, and they aren't doing it mostly for political theater.
I totally agree. Y'all fired A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. I actually purchased the book through Amazon, and I'm telling you, it is a heck of a read. And one of the questions that, because you discussed the passage of the 16th Amendment and the New Deal as these critical turning points for federal power, which is one of the reasons why this shutdown is happening because of that, I believe. How does that historical foundation inform your critique of today's shutdown and this centralized authority?
Well, the 16th Amendment was the establishment of the income tax. And so this was a huge shift where resources that were once going to the state infrastructure, meaning the governing parties, and then the derivatives of that were now being sent to this centralized place in Washington, D.C. Just look at the wealth disparity between, Northern Virginia, where the majority of it's the most direct impact of federal funding compared to most of the rest of the country, certainly where I live in rural Mississippi. It's huge. And so you have this massive influx of state resources going to Washington, D.C. It's not only grown the federal government to far beyond what it should have ever been, but it's also bred entitlement and a lack of accountability, which are really disasters for trying to get sound policy that provides critical services to the Americans that need it the most. And so, this shutdown is it's not what the president wanted, and the Democrats need to get the government running because there are critical functions that we finally have cabinet leaders that are looking at their agencies saying, who are the people that are part of these actions and who are not? And the ones that are not, it's a drain on the taxpayer dime, and it's creating a power suck that is not necessary and breeding a lack of accountability. So, there is this unique opportunity to restructure the federal government now that it's been shut down for so long. And I know that the Office of Management and Budget, Ross Vogt and his team over there are looking at this, but they're taking a strategic approach to this, making sure they don't cut things that actually are delivering the services the American people need. But we need the Democrats to do their job and to turn the government back on so that those services can, in fact, be provided.
Mandy, put some respect on his name. That's Darth Vader. But I mean, the book. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, it was a very easy read too. I mean, I found myself continue to just turning the page, and I started seeing. I'm like, man, I'm on chapter 6 already. But you talk about the deep state. You talk about the subtitle of your book. It mentions restoring federalism. I mean, I think that's an important topic, and it's not taught enough in schools. But in the context of this current shutdown, how might a renewed federalism mitigate the harm to states like Michigan?
Yeah, well, you give more power back to the states so that Michigan has more control over the levers of resources and the programs that actually funds. And with it being closer to the states, the state officials have a clearer picture of what makes sense for their citizens. What works in Michigan doesn't necessarily work in Mississippi, and vice versa. Yep. And so the people who are here, they're closer to the people who are going to be impacted. They understand their state, their populace, the local economy, what makes them tick, essentially. And so shifting that balance of power back to where the states actually have the upper hand compared to the federal government, as it was originally designed in our constitutional republic by our founders, I think that would level out the extent of a potential government shutdown if we're not all solely reliant on the federal government to keep going. If the Democrats want to engage in some theater, then let them. Yep. It won't have as big of a white and black economic impact on the various states across the country. I think it could really mute the effects of political theater.
Mandy Gunasekara, where can people find the book? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can find the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and you can follow me. The best place is on X at Mississippi MG.
And I'm telling you guys, you go out and get that book. I'm telling you, you're gonna thank me for the purchase, because I'm telling you, it's a real well-written book. Mandy Gunasekara, thanks so much for joining us. And if I ever see you, I want my book signed.
Oh, you got it. You got it. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been great.
All right, Mandy. Thank you so much. She's amazing, man. I mean, somebody that's been in the swamp has had to face the Goliaths in the swamp and stare them down, is not afraid. I mean, man, I'm telling you, man, I hope one day she does consider. I should have posed that question to her. I hope she considers running for office, because can you imagine her being governor? Can you imagine her being in the halls of Congress and the halls of the Senate, the U.S. Senate? And man, because she is not afraid at all. She does. If you follow her, you'll find out that this lady is not afraid of anything or anybody. Give us a call, 800-923-9385, 800-923-9385. We'll be right back.